What is up? What is up, everybody? Thank you for joining and welcome to another episode of the Insomniacs Livestream with me, your host, Dr. Andrew Kim. I'm a board certified psychiatrist. For those of you who are regular subscribers, thank you for joining again. And thank you for the delay. I know that we haven't streamed in about 2 episodes, we missed about a week. Thanks for hanging in there. I came down with COVID. Yes, I came down with COVID, felt pretty nasty for the past week and a half, plowing through work, didn't take a day off, just trying to survive. Finally turned a corner in the last few days. So still not 100%, but you know what? I didn't want to get in the habit of getting off sync with doing our live streams, getting in a bad habit, and then not streaming again. So here I am, still not 100%. Spilled a whole mug of coffee on the ground. I'm standing in coffee. I'm sitting in, my feet are wet in coffee. But you know what? We move on. So today's episode, for those of you who are joining, I see some of you here. Thank you for joining, you regular listeners. We're going to be talking about a couple different topics, keeping it more in the pop culture psychological realm. We are going to be talking about emotional support animals. Have we gone too far as a society? Are you for them? You're against them? Do you think there's too many bad apples that ruin it for everybody who really need them? So we're going to talk about emotional support animals and just kind of how pervasive they are now in our society. You see them at the grocery store, you see them at regular retail stores, you see them on airplanes. And what's your take? You're like, it is what it is. If it's going to help enough people who really need them, so be it. Or there's just too many rampant abuses. It's a joke. We're calling everything ESA at this point. I want to hear your thoughts. So for those of you who are joining live, just pop in your thoughts in the chat. You can text in your thoughts, or if you're hearing this recorded, put your thoughts in the comments. And please don't forget to subscribe. So we're going to talk emotional support animals. We're going to talk a little bit about what differentiates them from service animals, and the lines are murky at this point. We're going to talk a little bit about travel, road rage issues, seat pirates. If you're not familiar with that term, we're talking about people who snag your seat at the airplane, people who snag your seat at a ticketed event, like at a sports event. So, how do you deal with seat pirates and what's their deal? So, let's talk lighthearted today, talk about some of these topics. So, let's start with the first topic. We're going to talk about emotional support animals, or ESAs for short. Has our society lost their minds, lost our minds? Or is this, am I making too big of a deal? There's no big deal with ESAs, right? So let's first differentiate, right? What is the difference, technically speaking, between a service animal and an ESA? Okay. I'll say in the year 2025 right now, that is becoming murkier and murkier. But just to kind of make this easier, I'm going to throw up a little graphic here on this table. Okay. This actually captures it pretty decently. A service animal needs to be a dog or a miniature horse. I guess I'm laughing. A dog or a miniature horse. And it's meant to help an individual owner, the owner of the service animal, with a specific disability. It's supposed to be able to perform a specific task related to the owner's disability to assist them. And this is regulated under the American Disabilities Act, or ADA. Okay, so that in a nutshell is what a service animal is defined as. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the quirks about those definitions as well in a second. But look at the bottom row. That's the more important one. Emotional support animal doesn't necessarily have to be a dog or a miniature horse. It could be any animal. And that's where I have some qualms about that definition. Okay. We'll get to that. We'll get to some anecdotes later. And this is supposed to help the individual who has some form of psychiatric disability. Okay. Is training required? No. So no training is required. Does it have to perform a specific task? No. It provides emotional comfort, helps in their well-being, and provides support. Okay. And it is not regulated under the ADA, but there are different acts and guidelines that it does fall under, like the FHA, or Fair Housing Act, which makes some contentious, conflicts and tensions between landlords and housing companies, rental companies, and individuals at this point, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and various local laws. So states, essentially, the federal government says, each individual state, you guys just handle this. We do not want to get mixed up in this quagmire. So it's pretty much left up to the states at this point. Okay. All right. So let's go here. Let's go through a couple other things. So let's first talk about this concept of service animal. I think there's this notion out there. People are like, well, there's a huge difference between service animals and ESAs. So at the very least, right, there isn't murkiness there. Actually, there is. Okay. So although I said service animals are defined as dogs or miniature horses that are meant to do work or perform a specific task to help someone with an aspect of their disability, okay, there actually isn't much beyond that requirement. Okay, there really isn't. There actually is no specific form of certification or specific training course, specific etc., that is needed. So one can call their dog or miniature horse a service animal. Now, obviously, look, it is in the best interest of that person, right? If you have an actual disability, you want to find a dog or a miniature horse that actually can perform a very specific task, or else I guess what's the point then? It's not actually providing you benefit, providing you service. But I'm just saying from a technical perspective, there is no specific requirement to show a burden of proof that there is some specific training course it went through, some kind of certification it went through. There actually isn't. And why is that? Well, I think part of it, right, is about equity, access, to not be discriminatory, because you understand bureaucracy, you understand how state, federal, local government works, right? When there's money to be made, money will be made. And yes, those who don't have the means and the resources, especially those who are struggling with disabilities, that is problematic, right? Specialized training can be very expensive. I'm sure then you would have layers of bureaucracy and extra costs built in with licensing fees, proof of licensing, etc. So part of it is done for the sake of equity, access, and allowing those with disabilities to basically focus on function over certification. Meaning, if you truly have a disability, you are going to hopefully utilize a service animal that can actually help your disability, right? Versus just calling some dog service animal a name, right? So function and practicality over the necessity of all the bureaucracy to show the burden of proof of some specific defined training course. Okay. But again, keyword and theme you're going to hear me say a few times in the first portion of today's live stream is bad apples, right? Now, bad apples ruin it for everyone. Okay. Because look, for those of you who don't believe me, I think there is this misconception. People out there get shocked and realize, oh, I thought there's this like specific academy that these dogs go to then be certified to help the blind or to do this and to help that. It's kind of a free for all, and people are trying to help themselves out there. This is an example, right? This is straight from the state of Florida's website. Okay. So when you go under the section about, again, service animals, right, it says documentation that the service animal is trained is not a precondition for providing service to an individual accompanied by a service animal. A public accommodation may not. A public accommodation may not ask about the nature or extent of an individual's disability. To determine the difference between a service animal and a pet, a public accommodation may ask if an animal is a service animal required because of a disability and what work or task the animal has been trained to perform. So essentially it's saying if you are, a place of business, for example, you can't say to an individual that says, this is my service animal, I need written proof that this is a service animal. In the state of Florida, at least. It says that you can ask, is it a service animal? You can't ask about the individual's disability because of privacy. That part I get it. But we're basically saying we're going off blind faith. We're saying, hey, is that a service animal? Yes. What does it do? It helps me with X, Y, and Z. You don't have to actually prove it. You just have to say it. And the person that's asking says, okay, then, because that's what's supposed to happen, apparently, by law. Okay. And again, in essence, I don't think it's a bad thing. because I think those who truly have disabilities, we've lowered the bar and burden of proof and the burden of cost. Great. But you and I know what kind of world we live in and what kind of ridiculousness happens in this world and how many people now abuse the looseness of this. So this is really more, I don't want to get sidetracked with service animals. I don't really have as much of a deal with that. So what I'm trying to say is that's the bar. That is the bar for service animals. And I think people in our society have this perception, oh, the bar is high. Like, you know, service animals we shouldn't even question at all. Trust me when I say I have so many patients who are like, oh, I need a letter for this animal of mine. I go, for what? And they go, and I tell them generally, I really don't do a lot of ESA letters, almost never. Like, oh, no, Dr. Kim, this is my service animal. I said, really? Service animal for what? And they go, because of my anxiety, because of my social anxiety, because of my X, Y, and Z. And they say, look, by Florida law, by this law, by that law, this is defined as a service animal. And I go, well, technically, I guess you're not wrong, but, I'm really not going to support that. In a lot of cases, I don't. I'm sorry. I not to sound harsh. It's just things have gotten out of control. Okay. But I'm using this as an example now that we shift back to the main topic, ESAs. That's the bar for a service animal. Now, how low is the bar for an ESA? It's a lot lower. Like I said, even by the definition of some of these regulatory bodies, right? The Federal Housing Act, this and that, could be any animal, doesn't have to be a dog, doesn't have to be able to perform a specific task. It's there for emotional support, for benefit, right? So let's be balanced though, right? I mean, you can hear some of the cynicism in my voice, but like, what are the pros and the cons, right? Like for people who advocate for ESAs, for people who are kind of worried about their, I guess, overly liberal usage in our society at this point. Because look, I'm not arguing. What's up, Dennis? Dennis is one of our regular listeners. Dennis says, what kind of benefit does a patient get from using an animal as a way of escaping their scary feelings? Next comment from Dennis is, doesn't that just reinforce the false belief that said feelings are dangerous or that the person is unable to deal with them? Very good point. Yeah, let's talk about that, Dennis. Very good point. Very fair points. And let's be balanced here, right? I think on the positive side, I think there's a difference between the word therapeutic, beneficial, helpful versus the term clinically necessary or an effective treatment for, okay? And I really mean that. Those are different terms, right? Now, I'm trying to be balanced here. I can easily make an argument, and I don't disagree, that an emotional support animal could be therapeutic. It could probably be symptom relieving. It could probably attenuate symptom severity in the moment. And it could be helpful. And it could feel nice. And it could help psychologically. So you heard my words. I didn't deny. I'm not a denier. Helpful, could be therapeutic to some degree. Symptom severity attenuation, right? Look, I'm a dog owner. You've seen once in a while in one of my live streams, you've seen my almost 3-year-old Maltipoo, his name's Bingo, go right over there on his little poof on the chair behind me. So I'm not anti-animal. I got a pet dog. I'm surprised how much I love dogs. I didn't foresee myself being a dog owner. So that's where I'm coming from. So the context is I own a dog. Think they're adorable. I'm thinking about getting a second one. I'm bugging my wife to get a second one right now. So, but if you also ask me a question, and this is where some colleagues of mine will disagree, and I could care less. I can care less. I'm going to say it till my face turns blue. If you said to me that there is widespread, foundational, robust evidence that ESAs are effective treatments for specific mental disorders, no, there isn't any evidence for that. There isn't. I mean, you've heard my live stream, guys. You've heard I try to be balanced and say, I know that certain psychiatric meds are helpful for a cohort of people, but I know that they suck for a large cohort of people, right? I even bash FDA approved treatments, right? So don't get me wrong, okay? I'm very fair in terms of my cynicism. I'm cynical of a lot of things. So don't tell me that ESAs are an effective treatment that will bring a mental health disorder to resolution. Okay, so that's what I meant by there's no evidence that it is a clinical necessity, right? So anyone who comes to me and says, "Oh, this is necessary. I need this. This is what is necessary for me to be able to function." It is not a clinical necessity. It might be a therapeutic tool. It could be something as part of a treatment plan. Okay, but there's a big difference between saying, if I don't have this, right, this will then add on to my debility. I'm sorry. I'm not to sound harsh. I'm just trying to have a very straightforward conversation about this topic, right? And so to Dennis's point, right? So on one hand, of course, there are benefits. There are benefits of symptom alleviation, bonding, and I think bonding is important. There's even studies about, when we talk about suicide, right? There aren't many protective factors against suicide. There aren't actually. I think it's a misconception that even religion itself or religious beliefs, we always hear that, "Oh, I would never do that because of what I believe in." But there's actually not a ton of research to show us highly powerful stats on what are protective factors. One of the few things, though, and I know this is an abstract thing, and how does one truly even prove this, is the concept of bonds. Being able to identify a bond with somebody, and that when I say somebody, could even be with a pet. Can I truly mean that? Because think about that. Loneliness is a universal struggle. Loneliness knows no bounds. It doesn't care about your skin color, doesn't care about your wealth and your socioeconomic status and your geography and your language. Loneliness hits to the core. The fear of being alone, the fear of not being loved, the fear of not being needed. So look, bonds, important bonds, can be a protective factor in my opinion. So I don't underappreciate even the bond one can have with an animal, especially one that you love, like your pet. Okay? And how that bonding can be soothing. It can calm anxiety. To Dennis's point, there are benefits. It could be something that can help you ground yourself. It can reduce anxiety. It could reduce panic. It could maybe even reduce transiently some loneliness, give you some physical comfort if you're petting your dog, you're petting your pet, etc. So there are benefits. And the critics will say, to Dennis's other point, right? Some believe that, over keywords, I don't think anyone's going to say it can't be helpful. I think it's just an overdependence, overutilization can slow down progress and growth, right? Think about the concept of exposure response prevention therapy. For those of you who are not familiar with that, that's ERP, exposure response prevention therapy. That is a very commonly utilized therapy technique, evidence-based, proven to work for things like generalized anxiety, OCD, very robust power. I would say ERP is more effective and more durable long-term outcomes than things like SSRIs when it comes to like OCD and very severe anxiety disorders. ERP and CBT, evidence-based therapies that just flat out do work for a lot of people. Not everyone, but for a lot of people, right? And part of ERP, there's even studies and commentaries and recommendations to try to limit. Not as too strong of a word, but they recommend limiting the use of things like benzodiazepines or like sedative, calming, tranquilizing meds during some of the active exercises of ERP, because by almost tranquilizing and reducing things, it's hard to even work through the exposure and work through the discomfort and the anxiety and the tension that's evoked as part of that process, right? And that's like a concrete example of like how even in certain therapies, not to vilify those meds, it's just those can actually slow down progress. So as an analog, right, there are even some criticisms about an over-reliance or over-dependence on ESAs to maybe, not saying like there's the end-all be-all obstacle. I'm just saying, yeah, to give you that devil's advocate argument, there could be benefits, and it could also maybe slow down some growth, slow down some ability to work through some discomfort. So to give you that balanced answer, Dennis, yeah, you very valid point. So, even you kind of looking at both sides, I think that's a fair statement, right? So anecdote time, right? I'm not against the core concept per se of what ESAs are and what they could do for someone with a psychiatric issue. And look, here, I'm going to sound biased here. I'm going to sound very biased, right? And I am going to say, you know what? Life is not fair. I'm just going to say it. Okay. Life is not fair. And I do have a difference of opinion depending on each situation. And I really have to look at these things case by case with each individual, right? I mean, I've had a veteran who served for our country put their life on the line so that we can have the freedoms and luxuries that we have here in America, right? Not to sound like some uber patriot or something, but that speaks to me, right? And when someone who's back from their active tour, they're back in the States, they're adjusting to civilian life, they're struggling with their PTSD, and they have severe PTSD. I mean, to the point they're hyper vigilant. They're doing threat assessments nonstop. It's severe. Yeah, I mean, they're like, hey, I could really use this documentation to help me, to call my dog, my pet, an ESA, because I truly do believe, yeah, it's not the solution, but it really does help me. It reduces symptoms. I have sympathy. I have empathy. And my heart goes out and says, look, in the context of that specific case, sure, makes sense. And if it's a reasonable request, I kind of ask, in what context and where are you planning to take it that requires such a letter versus the privacy of your home. Try to understand the fullness of it. Yeah, I mean, it's the least I can do for that person who served our country, right? I mean, again, is that biased? Yeah, there's bias. I have bias. I'm a human being. I have biases, right? I can't tell you how many times, guys, I get requests. You think I'm joking for those, and I see several of you still here. Like I told you, I work at a company that works with colleges and universities. Okay. I can't tell you how many times per week students will ask me, Dr. Kim, I need a letter. I need an ESA letter. Why? Because I want to take my kitten to class. I want to take my 3 kittens to class. I want to take my lizard in its terrarium to class. I want to take my bird in this little mini cage to class. Why? Because it helps me not be distracted. It supports me emotionally so I can stay focused. It keeps me grounded when I get panicked that I don't know about the content or the answers, and this soothes me so then I can go back to paying attention in class. You think I'm joking? I mean, I get asked this like 5 times a week on average. And look, I know the way I painted the picture and portrayed it, I'm being a little biased, but I'm telling you guys, like 5, 6, who knows, bunch of times per week, average once a day. That's what I get asked for things like that. And that's where I got to draw a line. And that's where I think we have gone overboard. So I want to hear it from you. For those, there's several of you here, so I'm going to pause. You've kind of heard my kind of disgust at how overboard we've gone. Again, not against the core of it. It just seems like it's so unregulated. It's so unchecked, right? That's why I went on the rant about service animals. It's murky for service animals. They don't even regulate service animals, which I understand why. So imagine how loosely regulated this whole ESA thing is. And bad apples are ruining it for people. So I want to hear it from you. How do you feel when you see all these, I'm going to just say it, pets? Most of these are pets. They're not actual ESAs. KG, KG kills me. KG, thank you for joining. I appreciate your support, man. KG says I could see where an emotional support parent would be helpful in class. You are KG puts me in my place. But I'm serious. Like when you're at the grocery store and you see all these pets in the store, right? When you're on an airplane in an enclosed space and you see all these pets that are sitting in people's laps. Let's say you're a landlord. Let's say you're a private business owner. Let's say you're an Uber driver, right? And you say, hey, no animals allowed. And they go, nope, it's my ESA. Or, like I said, in a state like Florida, no, it's a service animal. Not even an ESA. It's a service. How dare you? It's a service animal, right? How do you guys feel? I want to hear it. So, for those of you, there's several of you here. How do you guys feel about this concept, right? Does it bother you one way or the other? You could care less. Maybe it doesn't bother you at all. You think we've gone overboard. You don't care. It helps people enough that people who want to abuse it can abuse it, but let's not screw it up for the people who really need it. I mean, what are your thoughts? So I want to hear your stories, your anecdotes. What's the most ridiculous ESA you've ever seen? I want to hear that too. So what's the most ridiculous ESA you've ever seen, you've ever heard of? What are your thoughts on it? And as you're doing that, I'm going to pull up a few other things, okay? So I'm going to pull up some boring stuff while you guys share some of your anecdotes, all right? Because look, you saw in that chart, right? You saw in that chart that ESAs, right, don't fall under the ADA, the American Disabilities Act. So it's kind of like the states, the 50 states in DC. It's like fend for yourselves. Ray says, who wouldn't want to take their pet with them everywhere? Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I got my dog. I want to take him to Home Depot with me. I mean, who doesn't want a cute little Maltipoo like mine keeping me company when I'm roaming the aisles at Home Depot for things I don't need for 45 minutes, right? So nice. So under the Fair Housing Act, there are some concrete guidelines which are interesting. It says these are the circumstances, the one on the left over here, that when landlords must honor ESA letters, the tenant must provide a letter from a licensed mental health professional, therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist that states that the tenant has a disability or mental health condition and that the ESA is necessary to help alleviate symptoms of their disability. Landlords must honor this even if there's a no pet policy. They can't charge extra pet fees. Okay. And then there are some exceptions to the rule on the other side. So single family home rented without a broker, undue burden, the ESA is causing significant property damage or some kind of direct threat to the health and safety of others, or some type of invalid or fraudulent ESA letter, right? So this is interesting because this is also a tension point, right? I get so many requests about wanting to override some rental company, apartment complex, condo complexes, pet policy, right? And again, I'm torn. I'm not gonna lie, I'm torn because like I gave you that one example, right? Like there are cases where I'm like, yeah, I could see how you could benefit and this could be therapeutic for you, especially if I know the patient for a long time. We have trust, we have a rapport, we have a relationship. So I know that this isn't just coming out of left field and they're just making something up versus someone who sees me on visit one for the first time. And it seems like their only agenda item is just to get a random letter so that they could override some kind of housing policy, right? So I see everything on the spectrum, right? I get appropriate requests and I get the ones that I know what they're asking for. They just need some letter and they're never going to see me again, right? Which, of course, I'm going to handle these situations differently. When I know someone, we have a trusted rapport versus someone just coming in, paying me to basically, in the guise of saying that they have some issue, just to get a letter signed. And you think I'm joking. I've had people just come in saying, I just need a letter. That's all. I'm never going to come back and see you again. I say, well, that's not what we're doing here. I'm not a ESA letter mill. And on that topic, bad apples, go online right now. For those of you who are here, there's several of you here, go on Google, open up a browser, and type online ESA letter. Go type it right now. Online ESA documentation service. see what you find. See what you find, right? And what's human nature? When there's money to be made, someone's going to make that money. You could just go on Google or whatever browser right now. Just type in online ESA service. You will find a myriad of companies. I don't even know their names. It's so stupid. Basically, you're going to get some telehealth or telephone consultation, random psychologist, social worker, licensed professional counselor, whoever it is, and you will get a churn and burn letter. You will never see that person ever again. It is a farce. And this is what's out there. Now, obviously, they know you're never coming back. They know you're not actually there for therapy. They're not prescribing you anything, trust me that. They're there just to write your letter. They act like they're going to do more. It's so nonsensical. And they know it, so they know that's going to be a one-time hit. So they make their money. Some of these are like $250, $300 a pop. Imagine that. You're paying like $300 for a letter. And it's so farcical. Go look at these websites, guys. It's like they'll say, "Oh, and we're accredited by the blah 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 society and the something something animal organization." And they just make up crap. It's just these made up organizations. It's like layers of money, right? These organizations exist to then act like there's some reputable organization so that these companies can then say, "We're aligned with them, they support us." And then you know what you get? You get a letter, some shoddy letter. And then you get these like stupid like HP inkjet printed certificates. They look like, and I'm sorry, I've had some of my patients bamboozled, right? They've paid the fees and they're like, "See, it's an official ESA letter regulated by the blah 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 body." And I'm like, "What body?" I'm like, "There is no national body that regulates ESAs. There isn't." And right, a lot of these companies, that's what they say. They say like, "Oh, you will get a certificate and it has a stamp of approval by blah 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 society." There is no national regulatory body for ESA. So please, guys, don't waste your money on that crap. So if you always hear me, I'm trying to spare you from grief and wasting your money. It's not worth. I guess if you're in a pinch and you have someone who literally just needs a piece of paper and they're brain dead, I guess, yeah, whatever. Do what you got to do. Do what you got to do. But I've had so many people screwed. These companies will overpromise and say whatever they want because they know you're going to plug in your credit card, you're going to get the letter, and you're never going to talk to them again, right? So good luck complaining, saying you want a refund, right? I've had people say, "Well, I brought this to my workplace. I thought I could have my pet in my cubicle because it's my ESA." And guess what? Then legal problems ensue. There's tension with your supervisor and HR. And they're like, "I got this letter from this random letter mill." That's what happened, guys. It happens, guys. So, like I said, bad apples on all fronts, right? People who are abusing this for people who really need it, whether it be a service animal, a true ESA, and people on my end, clinicians and companies who are even milking the stupid ESA letter mill business, I guess, just like there's Adderall pill mills online with online companies. There's ESA letter mills. I can't even believe this. Like where there's profit, like man, people get creative with their charlatanism. It's just crazy. But there's money to be made. Let me know, guys, for those of you regular listeners, whether it be KG, Dennis, Ray, let me know if you guys want to be letter writers. Okay, one day we're going to start a ESA letter mill online. You guys, we'll just have to sit down one day and negotiate a deal and how much you want to, what kind of cut you will. Use my name. You guys will be cut in. You guys can use ChatGPT and all these AI things. You could churn out a bunch of ESA letters and we'll make a killing, guys, because there is a high demand for this stuff. So anyways, like I said, as we move on to the next topic, share your anecdotes of any kind of ridiculous ESA pet encounters you've had over the years. So let's talk next about road rage. So how many of you here struggle with road rage? I'm going to raise my hand. Right? I think people think, "Oh, he's a psychiatrist. He must be, level-headed and grounded and do Zen Buddhism and mindfulness." Hell no, man. I'm horrible on the road. I'll look at my wife. She looks at me every time someone cuts me off or someone's going too slow, and she could see the tension rising. She's like, "Please don't. Please don't." I don't know what it is, right? I got to look inwards, guys. so at least I can admit it. I got some road problems. And when I got road rage problems, that means I got problems. That's the reality. That's the summary in a nutshell. When you got road rage, you got problems, right? It's not a them thing, it's a you at the end of the day. I mean, they're a part of it. They might have triggered you, but I got problems. So I'm going to say it right now just to get out of the way. I got problems. I'm not preaching at you. I'm trying to talk about this out loud with you guys. So how many of you are struggling with road rage or on a regular basis, whether it be all the time, intermittently, regularly, or you have a massive blow up once in a while? But how many of you listeners, there's several of you here, so don't lie, don't be shy. How many of you are struggling with road rage, right? And when I say road rage, right, it could come in all shapes and forms. That could be you tailgating somebody. That could be you recutting someone off after they cut you off. That could be you flicking the bird, right? You yelling out your window, you doing threatening gestures. You roll down your window. Come on, right? You yelling at them, swearing at them, actually hitting them, whatever. Like, all of these are various forms of road rage, right? Dangerous stuff, right? All jokes aside. And it's crazy, right? I mean, look, I mean, not to go overboard here, right? But look at this crazy stat, guys. US road rage incidents involving firearms are more common, deadlier since the COVID-19 pandemic. As of October 2024, 116 people have been killed in road rage incidents involving guns. Jeez, man. People are killing people out there as a result of road rage. I mean, like, in all seriousness, right? I mean, it's crazy. So, and I didn't even bother. Okay, I didn't even bother because there's so many non-reported things because most people don't involve the police. You have road rage and you move on, the other person moves on, and that's the end of it. You're pissy about it, you're annoyed about it, you're angry about it for the rest of the day, but it's not like you call the police. So who knows how many millions upon millions of incidents of road rage there are per year. But I'm just showing you the extreme, insane end of the spectrum. It gets so bad sometimes. Some people are killing each other out there. I mean, that's crazy. That's crazy, right? But that's what I mean. At the end of the day, it's a problem, right? So what is it? I mean, what are some of the reasons? Let's just run through it. What are the reasons, right? I mean, there's obviously the obvious ones, right? Let's get them out of the way. Stress, anxiety, right? And then something on the road just pushes you over the edge, pushes your buttons, the last thing you needed. There's perceived disrespect, right? Taking it personally, like it wasn't just, look, that guy just cuts off everyone, or he's just a sucky driver. It's like, oh, he wanted to screw me, right? He wanted to say F you. Oh yeah? F you back, right? So perceived disrespect. Another common one is pressure, time pressure. You mistime things, running late. And when you're running late and you're worried about the ramifications of running late, whether it's you're late to a meeting, you're late to work, you're late to a hot date, and you're going to hear it, you're going to hear something from your spouse, pressure goes up. Pressure goes up. Everything gets amplified, right? Lack of accountability. Just like social media, right? They don't know who you are. You're a random stranger. They don't know your name. They don't know where you live. They don't know where you work. Well, if they're a psycho, I guess they can then get your license plate number later. But you're like, you almost feel emboldened. And you're behind this hunk of steel, right? You're like, what are they going to do? You come out of your car, I'll show you, right? So just like in social media and keyboard warriors, right? You suck, bro. You suck, man. Blah, blah, blah. You stink. There's a safety of anonymity, right? Lack of accountability. Could be a control thing. Maybe this is normalcy. Maybe this is learned behavior. Right? Maybe you're tired. You're fatigued. You're hungry. You're hangry. Maybe you're under the influence. We don't talk about that a lot for road rage, right? How many incidents of road rage happen because your impulsivity is higher? Your stress tolerance is lower. Maybe you can't stand people. Maybe there's a trigger, right? People who are distracted, right? Come on, don't lie. How many of you get pissed when you see those drivers who are looking at their cell phone. That triggers me. That's one of my personal triggers. I'm like, man, I'm going to teach this person a lesson. Why? What am I, the distracted driver police? Like, I mean, I don't know why I take it so personal. I get so annoyed when someone's looking at their cell phone. It's a red light that turns green, and I'm like, "Are you going? Are you going? Honk, 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 honk. Are you going?" Like, I go nuts. Well, what are you doing? Like, I had someone, because we were in bumper to bumper traffic. The thing went from red to green to red, and they didn't even move, and I almost lost my mind. So whatever it is, right? These are a lot of the common causes, right? Factors that trigger your road. So how do you deal with it, right? And then those of you out there, as you're hearing me, right, tell me about what are your pet peeves on the road? What gets you triggered? How do you deal with it, right? But we're going to go over some general stuff, right? So number one, got to change your perspective, right? Change your perspective, practice some empathy. I will say, I think this is a true statement. As cynical as I am, there is still a part of me that thinks that most, I'm going to say, I didn't say everyone, I said most people, I don't believe are malicious at the end of the day, right? I think there's a lot of bad drivers. I think there's a lot of bad drivers. I think half the people on the road shouldn't be allowed to have driver's licenses. I think that's one thing. I think we have to raise the bar of who should be allowed to get a driver's license. But again, I understand equity, fairness, etc. But I'm just saying, there's so many bad drivers. There's so many distracted drivers. There's so many anxious drivers. I see people. I get frustrated when someone's driving 35, on the expressway when the minimum's supposed to be like 45, 55, right? I mean, it's almost dangerous to go that slow, right? So there's anxious drivers, bad drivers, distracted drivers, people who are lost. Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they're stressed, whatever, right? So it's about perspective, practicing some empathy, time management. How do you leave early so you don't have that pressure cooker phenomena that we described earlier, right? So you're not setting yourself up to snap, that you're not setting yourself up that you need to hurry. You're also a factor in causing the problem with the road rage. Right? How do you change the environment? Like listening to calming music, something that's relaxing, something that you're into versus, I don't know, as a dude, right? I mean, I listen to so much sports radio. Sports radio is angry. Have you ever heard happy sports radio? Rarely. Maybe after your team wins a Super Bowl or something. But for the most part, sports media is just like toxic. It's just toxic anger, right? Not listening to polarizing politics nonstop when you're bumper to bumper and it's 105 degrees out and your AC is not really spitting out hot, like really cold air. Why escalate things internally, even within the domain of your car? Right? Let's say you've already crossed the line. Let's say you've engaged. Someone swerved to threaten you, you swerve back. You still have the chance, even if you crossed the line and you started raging, you could de-escalate. You don't have to keep upping the ante to top each other, right? There's always this concept of like, well, they did this, I'm going to do it back. They did this, I'm going to do it back even harder. There is a chance, even when you cross the line, to de-escalate. KG says, my breathalyzer helps me with road rage. But what is that? Beauty Co breathing? Is it because of the deep breathing you're talking about, KG? Having to blow into that thing? And also, at the end of the day, right, just got to ask yourself, is it worth it? Is it worth it? And we've talked about it before, whether it's motivation about your health, motivation about your goals, your New Year's resolutions, like why, that corny phrase, but I mean it. Why? Like, why do you do what you do? KG says, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's what I thought. Deep breathing. So point is deep breathe. Yeah. Deep breaths. Definitely agree. But like, is you winning this road rage back and forth, right? You tailgating them tailgating you speeding and beating them to the next light. I mean, Is it worth whatever legal repercussion? Is it worth whatever safety repercussion? You getting in a car accident, you pulling over, getting in a fist fight, you wrecking your car, you hurting the people in your car if your family's in there. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Getting arrested, going to prison, getting a ticket, getting a fine, dying, is it worth it? And you proving a point, you itching that scratch to satisfy the anger, to say you won, is it worth it? And is that aligned with your goals of what you're actually valuing in life? You say, I value being there as a father, as a mother, as a spouse. So does this road rage incident line up with that, support that? Does it somehow get you closer to the goals that line up with those values to be a good spouse, father, mother? Probably not. Probably not. If there's any lesson to be given to others around you, it's how to show grace and how to show flexibility and adaptability and groundedness, right? So again, but all these things go back to my main point when I started kind of jokingly, right? It's like it all starts with you, right? It all starts with me. I'm throwing myself in there. I don't know what it is, guys. I get so triggered on the road. And I've done some stupid things. So anecdote time, story time, right? What I want to hear yours, right? I'm going to share. So you better share. One of you better share one of the dumb things you've done, right? I'm not here like doing some bragging stories to show how tough I am. Like I've never gotten into fist fights or anything like that on the road. I'm glad I didn't. I think it's a good thing. That'd be crazy if I did, right? But I mean, I've done some petty things. I've done some petty things. I had this dude once cut me off, flicked me off for some reason too. Like cut me off and flicked me off. Like I'm the one who got cut off. So I'm like, what's going on? Cut me off, flicked me off, and then I honked once, and then he made a big deal because I honked. He was with his girl. I think probably I'm making some assumptions, but maybe some bravado because she was there. And then, of course, by chance, we happened to pull into the same plaza. We're going to some same store. I can't remember what it was, grocery store, this or that. And I could have let it go right there, right? I could have let it go right there, right? And then as I'm walking into the store, they were kind of in front of me, this couple, the dude who was driving with his girl. And I don't know, he turns around. We're not even close to each other, probably like 30, 40, 50 feet apart just by chance because the timing. Barks back at me, blah, 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 what up, dude? I'm like, I don't know, cussing. And right there, life lesson, right? I could have let it go. Be like, well, I don't even know this guy. What is it going to do to me later? I mean, I'm just going to go about my day after this. So like, what is it to me at this point? I could have let it go, but I didn't. Right? And so what did I do that was petty? Well, I go in the store. Oh God, what did I get? I think it was some form of, some form of chocolate, individual chocolates that were in the checkout portion of the aisle. And I know this is so stupid, but I just made sure I went in. I didn't even run my errands. See, this is how dumb I am. So I went there to run errands. I didn't even run my errands. They went into the store. And I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm not going to run my errands. I go straight to the checkout, buy a bunch of little chocolate boxes. One was like really sticky. It was like it wasn't Milk Duds. It was like maybe those like mint, those chocolate mint ones. I can't remember, and I'm just like, I'm just trying to take a huge mouthful of chocolate, chewing it, kind of gross and sticky at this point. And then I spit it all over this dude's windshield. Chew it up, chomp, 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 chomp. Next box, spit it all over the door handles on both sides. And then I walk away, take my car, park it off to the side so I could still see the car, and I just sit there. This is how stupid I am and how petty I am. And I'm like, I want to see this. And then, of course, girl comes out. Oh my what's going on? And then the dude's like, what's going on? And, oh, gross. And then they're debating if it's like crap or poop. They don't even want to touch it. So now they're stuck and they got their bags and they're looking and looking what's going on, looking in circles. Who did this? Right. And then the windshield wipers eventually go up when they get in and makes a mess because it was on their windshield. And I'm sitting there crying. Look, I'm still, this is how petty I am. I'm laughing. Okay. And in the moment, did I get some satisfaction and a chuckle? And I'm like, ha ha, got him. And yeah, but at the end of the day, it's like, was it worth it? No. I mean, it's like I kind of got in trouble, could have gotten in a fight. Dude could have caught me doing it. Theoretically, right? He could have called police, said there's property damage, blah, 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 blah. So this is how, but I'm telling you, right? I'm a psychiatrist. I'm supposed to be helping people with their mental health, right? I'm not supposed to, be a model of perfection. I'm just saying this is how crazy road rage gets people, right? I'm doing stupid, childish, funny in the moment, but childish, petty things like this. This is crazy, guys, right? Like something happens and this primal thing goes off. And that's why, and now, like, let's put joking aside. It can escalate, right? Mine was kind of the stupid, like, childish prank kind of thing, but it's like, man, right? I can see. I don't know about you guys. Maybe you guys are better controlled. Maybe you guys have a higher stress tolerance. Maybe you guys aren't as petty as me. I hope you guys are. I could easily see how things can escalate, right? It's no surprise to me that people pull over and get into fistfights and physical altercations, that people bump each other's car. They don't even care about the car and they hit their own car to hit someone else's car. I could easily see it. To me, it's not a foreign concept how people can do this stuff. Because driving is stressful, right? It's one thing when you're doing a joyride and there is no traffic and you can go 60, 70, 50 freely and nobody is nearby, right? And it's a weekend when there's no rush hour traffic. That's different. I'm saying in typical everyday driving, morning, late afternoon, evening rush hour, expressway, highway commute, nobody enjoys that in my opinion. Most people don't. I mean, I think some people who figured out a routine where you can, maybe it is time away. I shouldn't say 100% of people don't like it. I say most people don't like it though, right? And then you add that on top of everyday stress and the demands of life and all the things that you're juggling. Yeah, it's an easy reason to see how that is a powder keg for road rage, right? Anyways, but see, I shared petty story. Some of you don't lie. So, and especially for those of you who are watching this recorded after we're done with this tonight, I better see some stories here. Okay. I gave you my ridiculous, childish, petty story. Whether it's childish, petty, I want to hear it. Tell me, or whether it's an isolated incident or something you do regularly, you got to tell me your story now. All right. In the home stretch, lighthearted topic for the home stretch. Seat pirates. Let's talk about seat pirates. Since we're on this topic of infringing, whether it be, with road rage, with the ESA animals, let's talk about seat pirates. Probably the most relevant is airplanes. I want to hear it from you guys. This is about you. When you buy a plane ticket, and I know it's going to be different for everyone because that probably depends if you're traveling alone, if you're traveling with family. But let's say when you buy an airlines ticket and, it sucks. Let's be real, guys. Airports suck. God, airports suck. And you go through TSA pre-check or the general boarding line. You get there several hours early because you got to be there several hours early, or you rush there just in time to make it to the gate, whatever, depending on your style of travel. Then you got to line up. And before we get to the sea pirates, let me ask you this. Why are people like cattle at the gate, right? When they're like boarding group 1, right? And I mean, it's almost a joke at this point, right? Like boarding the platinum and the titanium platinum, then boarding the emerald key and gold key members. And then finally, then they get to the peons like us, right? They're like boarding group 1, boarding group 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So why does everyone everyone just like huddles near the damn line? Like, I mean, I get it. Like, no one wants to check in their bag, I guess. And, but man, that's one of my biggest pet peeves right there. It's even the pre-boarding, getting onto the plane is a damn struggle. They just, I don't know. Something's got to change with the travel industry. I just look at that as a psychiatrist. I just shake my head. And this is why, unless I absolutely have to, like, I only bring like a backpack or like a real like tiny traveler bag with like a day or two's worth of clothes. I'm like, I'm just gonna put it under my seat. I don't even want to deal with people. I don't want to be in the herd of people. I can care less at what point I get on the plane. I'm just gonna get to my seat and I'm gonna put my bag under my seat. I don't even want to deal with the overhead stuff. I travel light. Like, I wear what I'm going to be wearing them. Like, if I'm going to be short of clothes, I'd rather buy clothes. I just don't want to deal with it. That's my style of travel. So back to the seat pirate thing. So I just had to say that I can't stand the whole pre-boarding process, the boarding process. It's horrific. So seat pirates, how do you deal with the seat pirates? So you have a ticketed seat, whatever. It's the window, it's the aisle, it's the middle. You get there and you see someone turn to you. Oh, is it okay? I'm going to sit here. How do you respond? And I'm sure it's different depending on situation. But yeah, there's still some of you here. You made it to the end. We're going to be here for a few more minutes. So tell me, don't tell me you've not run into this at some point. Whether it's a couple that split apart, right? That's a classic one, saying, oh, like, my boyfriend's there, my girlfriend's here. Like, can we switch so I can sit next to them, even though this is your seat, right? That's common. I bought my ticket late. I want to sit next to my kid. That's a different one, right? I don't want to be separated from my 11-year-old, my 9-year-old, right? Then you get the other ones who are just like, I really just prefer this seat. Like, I prefer the aisle seat, so I'm not enclosed. I prefer the window seat so I can lean on it. KG, KG says, quote, may I sit here? And response, oh no, that's for my emotional support animal. KG, man, you're something. You are funny, bro. You can't. Yeah, but you get some people who are just like, there isn't even like I'm trying to sit with like people in my party kind of deal, right? You get the loners, right? The loners who are just like, I just don't want to be squashed in the middle. Like, I want to be on the window, or I don't like the middle seat. I don't like sharing two armrests. So how do you respond? How do you respond? There's still people here. So how do you respond? Are you the type of traveler who's like, I don't really care, whatever, bro? You said, go ahead. Like, you don't want to deal with it? Are you the person says why, and you need a reason, and you want to hear a good enough reason? You just flat out say no. Say, hey, I picked this for a specific reason. I paid for it. Sorry. And you don't want to deal with it. You say no. Are you the person who gets the flight attendant involved? Says, no, like, you got to move. And I'm going to get the flight attendant if you don't move, right? How do you deal with it? I'm just curious. How do you deal with it? I'm sure you've run into it at some point. What's your attitude? Is it, do you have a hard and fast rule? Do you have a hard line in the sand? You approach it the same way all the time? Is it depend? You are a flexible person. And the reason I'm asking is there's been a lot of these on social media that have gone viral recently where people are just refusing. They'll say, no, I want to sit here. And it's not their ticketed seat. And then the person says, excuse me, like, this is my seat. Like, I need you to move, or I don't want to, or the way you asked me is what offended me. So now I'm not going to switch. And the person will still refuse. And flight attendants do have to get involved. And there have been some instances where the flight attendants are like, can you just switch? Like, meaning they don't even want to deal with the hassle. Like, they would rather not enforce what was ticketed because they don't want to cause a stir. And I get it. I mean, to some degree, like, is it better to negotiate? But how would you even feel about that? Like, let's say you called for the flight attendant and their first response was to negotiate with you for you to take something else. Now, I'm not saying a better seat. I'm not saying go to first class. I'm saying, like, they just want you to sit somewhere else. They want you to just switch to just, like, more so because they don't want to deal with this. Would that offend you even more? Would that escalate it even more? Or would that even discourage you more? Because like they're not even going to have my back. So now, so now I might as well just give it and just, this is really not worth it. Right. So what do you think? I'd say, look, I think it depends for me. And I'm sure this is similar to many of you out there. When I travel by myself, like, and I do travel for business here and there, not as much as I used to. Back in the day when I used to do clinical research, I was traveling like easily 4 or 5 times a month. That was a lot. So I almost felt like that George Clooney movie with George Clooney and was it Anna Kendrick, where I'm just like, I have this system. I'm gonna be light. I'm gonna look at the TSA lines and the security lines, like see which one's the most efficient. I would wear the pants I was gonna wear, for that day, and like a multi-purpose sports jacket that could be nice enough to be a suit jacket. Like I was trying to travel so light, small, lightweight backpack, tiny little duffel bag at the most. I so I've kind of become accustomed to that. Like I travel light. So when I'm traveling by myself, most of the time I have a very blasé attitude. I think as long as you ask me nicely, and if you ask me nicely and throw in the reason, most of the time I don't really care. Um, but I think that how they ask is very important. I think I've had a few people just saying, "Hey, uh, I'm just going to sit here." Okay. I've had literally people, I said, like, they're like, "I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to sit here." Okay. I'd prefer this seat. And I say, "Well, that's my seat." Like, "But it's okay though. I'm just going to sit here." And I go, "How come?" They're like, "Oh, I just really prefer an aisle seat or a window seat." And when it's like that, oh, again, guys, silliness, right? My childishness kicks in, ego sits in. And depending on how I feel and how much drama I want that day, usually I don't want any, but once in a while, out of principle, I'll say, "No, it's okay." I said, "I'm going to sit there. I paid for that." And I will, because I didn't appreciate how it was said and how it was stated. And just to prove a point and just to be a dick, sometimes I do. But I would say 90 something percent of the time, I'm usually not going to care. But it is different when I'm with my family, right? If it's me, my wife, my kid, I think certain circumstances, I've switched when it makes sense, just when there's sympathy, empathy, and it makes sense to do it. But, of course, I don't want to be separated from my family if possible. But when I'm by myself, I would say most of the time I'm pretty flexible. As long as you ask me respectfully, maybe you just throw in a very brief, succinct reason. I don't care too much, really. But what about you guys? I mean, and I'm not saying it from a judgmental standpoint that needs to be your attitude, because at the end of the day, travel sucks. Airplane sucks. Airplanes, I feel like I'm a sardine. Like, I mean, I could barely make my legs stretch out. Somehow, I'm always in a weird tight seat with two big dudes. I'm 6'1", 230 pounds. I wasn't designed to be comfortable on an airplane. And I've only flown non-economy twice in my life, and that's when some business paid me to fly out, internationally, and they paid for it. So flying sucks. And then when you throw more headaches on it, oh my gosh, it gets stressful. So, and then deplaning, don't even get me started with deplaning. I'm sidetracking us here, but deplaning, I look, sometimes I look, because usually I'm in the back, right? When I'm traveling by myself, I always have a crappy seat in the back, and I look towards the front after we've landed, seatbelt light goes off, the lights come on, and I'm just fascinated. As someone in the mental health field trying to understand human psychology, I I look straight ahead, I look at the aisle, and I say, how is America not burned down yet? That's actually what I think about. You think I'm joking? That's what I actually think about when I see the process of human beings trying to deplane from an airplane. I say, I'm like, how are we still here? How are how is society not totally crumbled? Because what I say is like brain cells just die during the deplaning process. People are just like, I don't know how to open this upper cargo. Like, it's a handle, and you press it and you grip it and you put it up. And then suddenly you don't know how to take out luggage. Then suddenly you don't remember where your luggage is. Suddenly you don't know how to take turns, and one person's trying to cut this person trying to get out of their seat because they're going row by row and you're assuming you're doing turns, but this person doesn't care about turns. They're just trying to go down the aisle and cut past you because you know what? Getting ahead of you by 5 seconds is so important. And I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, how has society not burned down? That's what you think I'm kidding. And I say to myself, then I go, there must be some higher power there, whether it's God or whether it's Allah or whoever it may be, but there's got to be some higher power that is looking out for us. Because when I look at how human beings conduct themselves on an airplane from all different walks of life, tradesmen, blue collar workers, white collar executives, I'm just like, how can we function as a society when we can't even deplane off an airplane, guys? I'm just like, I should just write a book about human observation, about boarding, pre-boarding, deplaning, seat pirates. It's an interesting microcosm of our society and all of our neuroticism and all our problems. It's just crazy, guys. So, anyways. But for those of you who have listened all the way to the end, I appreciate you guys joining in a rather lighthearted episode. And for those of you who are hearing this recording, I want to hear your opinions. So whether it's about your opinions on emotional support animals, whether we've gone too far or not, road rage, whether you struggle with it, whether you've been on the, receiving end of it, silly ones, scary ones. How do you deal with seat pirates? Since we broadened it a little bit, forget just the seat pirates, but what are your pet peeves about getting on and getting off an airplane and other weird airplane pet peeves? But we're back, guys. COVID, spilled coffee, my socks wet with coffee for this entire live stream. You think I'm joking. My socks just soaked in coffee. Didn't stop us. We're back. The Insomniacs Livestream is back. For those of you who hung in with me, there's several of you here. I appreciate your support as always. I'm going to be posting a few more evergreen videos this month, in the month of February. It's already February, guys. 2025 is already flying by. And for those of you who are brand new, joining with us for the first time, we do live streams every Saturday night and Tuesday night, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern. So I will see you guys on Tuesday. Let me also know who you guys think are going to win the Super Bowl. Very fascinated to hear that. So Dr. Andrew Kim, until next time, guys, you guys have a good night, and I appreciate you. And KG, that seat right there, that's for my ESA. So I'll talk to you later. Have a good one, guys.